Good morning, everybody. I know there's still a few people in the cafe, and they'll make their way in once they, hear all the, whatever's happening in here. It's good to see you all here today. If you're joining us online, we're glad you're here as well. What a gorgeous fall morning we have to gather here. Today, if you didn't know, today is Group Sunday. I think all of you have done a group before, so you at least know what I'm talking about. If you haven't signed up for a group, take a look at the handout that you have on the back side is a list of all the groups. So choose your group and head out soon. After a few minutes, we'll dismiss you all. So if you have questions about them, let me know, let Chris know, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. Just a couple of things that you need to be aware of today. Tonight is branch students. It's their regular Sunday gathering. 6 to 7:30, they gather for a meal, some games, some conversation for students in grades 6 through 12. It'll be a great time of gathering and connection with that group of kids. I hear there's pizza coming for dinner, so if that helps, there you go. You're welcome. And the only other thing I want to make sure you know about this morning is next Sunday afternoon, we are hosting a screening of the film called The Law and the Prophets. It's all about the background of the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. It is phenomenally done. I took a class a few years ago in seminary about this, which included a trip to Israel and Palestine. I watched this documentary recently and learned so much more and saw so many more stories and connected a lot more dots. So if you are curious about how we got to this moment in history, this is a really, really great opportunity to learn more about that. So we have rented out a theater in Grandville, so there's plenty of space. Plenty, we hope, actually not. We hope not. So sign up, get tickets, and then invite people you know who this might be meaningful for. Spread it far and wide in all the networks that you have and that you are impactful of. That is how things change, right? When I have a relationship with somebody else and I tell them something that I'm learning that might be different than what they're learning. So if you can, sign up. You can get tickets with that QR code. There's, I think, a couple of handouts in the back with just information about that film. It's also on your announcement sheet. So take one, hand it to a friend, email the link to a friend, whatever you need to do. If you have questions, Chris knows more than I. Yeah, exactly. I would love to answer your questions, but then I might just say go talk to Chris. It's all right. All right. Do you want to say anything else about that? All right.
Yeah. I'll say some other things. Yeah. Last week we talked about Israel-Palestine, and one of the things that we were trying to consider together is the way in which vengeance is a very natural reaction that we have to being harmed. And this week I happened to come across this TikTok, and so I'm going to play it for you. It's from a legend. Stevie Wonder had something to say about this. And sound would probably be helpful. Yep.
It's been hard to stay silent with all that's going on. In my mind, I get it. I hear what's being said from all corners of our earth. I get it when you're controlled by what you're thinking. In our heads, we hear, if you fight me, I'll fight you harder. If you curse me, I'll curse you and yours even stronger. That is how our mind thinks, speaking without listening to the Spirit. It is a mind that is not connected to the soul. The Spirit knows that fighting harder, cursing stronger, hating longer will never end. It just gets easier to use a knife, a gun, a drone, or a bomb. All in the name of blood spilled on the ground to leave more lives buried in the ground, never reaching higher ground.
So he's just highlighting, I think, what we were trying to consider together, that when we're not connected to the Spirit, we tend to think that more revenge, more violence is what will ultimately solve or heal what has been wounded. And as he says, it never does. I think it's why Jesus teaches us, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. We tend to oversimplify. We talked about this last Sunday as well. We oversimplify the other or the enemy. And Jesus here is making things more complicated, right? He's inviting us to hold some tension here. Specifically in this passage around, again, people who are our oppressor or who have harmed us or who are against us or who think differently than we do or vote differently than we do. And Jesus is inviting us to hold some tension. I think Stevie Wonder does as well. Here's the end of his little TikTok.
I stand up with peace. I stand up with love. That's who I am. That is what God made me of. I stand down on war, and I stand down on hate. We cannot let revenge be our unimaginable fate.
Anybody know what that instrument is? Anybody? Really? I have no idea. I'm very curious. I've never seen it before, but leave it to him. He is such a musical genius. It wouldn't surprise me if he has created it from nothing. But, this is who God has made me, he says, to be a person of love. And to be a person of love is to be a person who holds tension. It's what we tried to capture a little bit last week in this both and. And I was just looking over this board after we were done on Sunday and looking over here, and here's healing, and this one was easy to trace. The other one was heartbreak, holding both healing and heartbreak. This one was light, and I could probably guess what the other one was, but I had to really work to find its darkness, to hold both, to recognize and to acknowledge that both are present. What I didn't anticipate is how messy this was going to be, but it was very appropriate. That to find the other side of it actually takes a little bit of work. I thought that's spot on. Because it's easy to hold one and not the other. I was curious here, just to invite you to think for a moment, are there any both ands that you've been holding this week or that you've noticed in the world or in your life? Maybe they're what you put up here last week. Maybe you weren't here last week, and so this is kind of a new thing that you're thinking about. But any both ands that you're feeling the tension of this week? And they can be really, really serious, like war and, oh boy, hold on. Give me a second. I just saw war over here. I don't know what's on the other side. Oh, sure. Yep. Peace, of course. Yeah. So it could be really serious, and it could be really fun and funny, and both ends aren't always life and death sort of things. Any that come to mind? Can you say that again? Creation and destruction. Thanks, Jeff. Both are happening in our world. And, they're not, again, destruction isn't even necessarily bad. That word probably carries negative connotations often, but things do get broken down or things do come to an end, and that That isn't always a bad thing, but there's certainly tension there, isn't there? Was someone else saying another one? Yeah. Friendship and disagreement. Thanks, Nate. I feel the tension when you say that. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, both being really happy to see your kids grow and also sad at the loss of a season, a time in life that will be no more ending. Yeah, it's both the end. Yeah, Katie? Growth and rest. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting tension, isn't it? Growth in our culture is often like an all-out, always growing, must always be earning more, achieving more, and you're inviting the idea that rest is a connected part of growth, but there is tension there. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah. Wanting to be social and wanting to be alone. Anybody feel that tension? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Control and letting go. Oof. Yeah, thanks, Mindy. Ooh. All right, folks. I mean, I didn't know if you were going to say anything this morning, and wanting to be loved and wanting to be yourself. That there's certainly tension there, Micah. Yeah, thanks. Go ahead. Life and death. Is that what you said? Yeah, these two things that feel maybe very opposite are actually deeply connected to each other. Yeah, good. Mars? Confusion and comprehension. Both. And, yes. Thanks. Good. I'll add one more that we talk about here often, and we've been talking about it when we do these group Sundays. We kind of keep bringing these themes back. And you could choose lots of words, but this morning I'm just choosing mundane and sacred. You know, the idea that there are these moments or places that are kind of holy, but they're few and fleeting. You know, maybe a Sunday morning is sacred somehow, or we could step into a particular space that's sacred, and the rest of it's just mundane. And maybe instead there's some tension in the sense that maybe both are somehow true at the same time, all the time, maybe. Or maybe more often than we might think, including things like playing video games, which is happening downstairs today. You know, we got a bunch of different setups going, and that may feel not sacred. Maybe it's also not mundane. Maybe it's awesome, you know, but it's not sacred, is it? It could be. Making food, that's about as mundane as it gets. Chopping vegetables or whatever you're going to be mixing in bowls, you know, very mundane, but it doesn't have to be. Conversation that's taking place out in the cafe around current events, what's that? That's just conversation. It doesn't have to be. God is with us always, and we being together with God means that there's always this kind of hanging in the air. Every moment's potentially sacred. Doesn't mean that the heavens open and, you know, something magical sort of happens. That's maybe what we associate with this word. Sacred just means that it's holy in the sense that we recognize God's presence with us and we see it in each other as well. So let's try and hold that as we move into these different groups. Ezra, would you put up the places where people are going just as a reminder? If you're doing silence, if this morning just being quiet and still is the thing you need to do, you're just staying right here in the sanctuary. Video games are right in the basement in the big room below our feet. The discussion group's in the cafe, cooking group, of course, in the kitchen downstairs in the basement. Little ones are in the nursery. And we're back here at 11 a.m. Ready? Enjoy. Go. our office.